Welcome to the new season of Drive. We're back for 2023, but for the 10 episodes of this season, we're going to be touring Australia because you've asked for it in electric and hybrid vehicles exclusively. Plus, in addition to showing you great cars and great drives, we'll answer each week one of the common questions that you've asked us over the break. So stay tuned to Drive TV every Sunday on Channel 9.
The views are out of this world.
This thing is unbelievable. It sounds incredible.
Golly gee, everybody, look at that.
We thought we would start this season with one of Australia's most popular electric vehicles, the one right behind me, the Tesla Model Y. We're going to take you from the heart of the Hunter Valley in New South Wales all the way to Tamworth, and in doing so, we're going to answer a question that you've been asking. It's a good one too. Can you do the kind of long-distance touring that we do so often at Drive in an electric vehicle? The answer is yes, but, and we'll get to the but throughout this episode. You might be wondering, why are we going to Tamworth? Well, we're going to do something that I have always wanted to do. It's not just an iconic town, but it's one of Australia's biggest music festivals. That's right, we're going to go to the Tamworth Country Music Festival. I'm going to catch up with an old mate while we're out there. We've got a special guest this episode, so that's incredibly exciting. But we start here in the Hunter Valley. Now, the drive up from Sydney on the freeway, it's a little bit boring, but once you get here, there are so many amazing towns and wineries and places to eat and accommodation you have to visit. Places like Pecolbin and Broke, Scone, Muswellbrook, Singleton. The list is almost endless. So join us this week as we take you from the heart of the Hunter Valley all the way to Tamworth for the Country Music Festival.
Little warm puppies and children.
You always want to know a little bit about the vehicle that we're driving, so just quickly, this is the Tesla Model Y, which you probably already knew, but this is the entry-level model. Now, we tend to think that that's the smart way to buy an electric vehicle. You don't necessarily need more power, more performance, a quicker 0 to 100 time, and then invariably you're going to spend more money as well. I've printed out Tesla's official spec sheet just so we get the numbers right. This has got a battery pack that is just over that 60 kilowatt mark, which means against Tesla's claim of 455 kilometres, we're getting about 420 odd in the real world. So that's genuinely impressive. We've got red multi-coat paint, 20-inch induction wheels. Standard equipment includes the premium interior with the 5-seat layout and autopilot. And what all that adds up to right now as we're testing it is an indicative drive-away price of $76,557, which sits this Tesla Model Y right in that sweet spot up to about $80,000, where a lot of you are shopping for an electric vehicle. So it looks good on paper. Let's see how it stacks up on a long-distance road drive. It took a little while to land in Australia, but the Model Y range starts from $72,300 before on-road costs, with the entry-grade rear-wheel drive that we're driving and a range-topping all-wheel drive performance, which starts from $101,612 before on-road costs. The Model Y that we have gets the aforementioned single motor on the rear axle and 220 kilowatts, while the performance steps that up with one motor on each axle, all-wheel drive and 393 kilowatts. The performance is also faster and has a claimed range of 514 kilometres thanks to a larger battery pack. Buyers can tailor their Tesla Model Y to suit, with the configurator on the website illustrating the various options available. Now, I mentioned in the intro that there's a but, and there is a but with electric vehicles, whether we like it or not. Let's forget about range anxiety and how far we can go on a charge, because we now have electric vehicles that have the kind of range, like this Tesla Model Y, that's beyond 400 kilometres in the real world. This is incredibly energy efficient, and we'll get to that in a minute, but we're getting a real-world indicative 420 kilometres from a charge out here on the highway, which is not an electric vehicle's natural habitat. So that's really impressive. forget about range anxiety, but start to think about the planning that you need to do. Because if you need to charge from 30 or 40% battery life, as we've had to do, you're going to need somewhere between 30 and 50 minutes to charge the vehicle during your road trip. Now that could be at the end of the day when you get to your accommodation, that could be on your lunch stop. So you have to plan ahead and work out where you're going to stop, how long you're going to stop for, and that could include a diversion. You might have to turn off the main road and visit one of these smaller towns in order to stop in and charge up your EV to continue on the road. It's not impossible to do this kind of touring by any means, and it's probably easier now in 2023 than it's ever been, but you have to plan ahead and you have to plan to spend that time to charge up. The question that we get asked a lot is, do you need to get the fastest or the most powerful or the most expensive version of an electric car? And Tesla, to be fair to all of us who read the literature and see all of the releases, they make a lot about how quick their electric cars are. But I think we should move aside from that. I think we should forget how fast the car is and think about practicality and value for money. I can tell you now, after spending a good few hundred kilometres behind the wheel of this Model Y, you certainly don't need all-wheel drive and you certainly don't need more performance. This feels fast enough, but it uses its energy very efficiently, which to me is more important than how quick it gets from 0 to 100. Yes, it's a party trick that electric cars tend to have, and to a degree, this Model Y, even though it isn't the fastest Model Y, is still very quick. And I'd like for us to stop focusing as much on how quick an electric vehicle is and start talking more about how practical it is for exactly what we're doing on this episode of Drive, getting out and exploring the amazing countryside. One thing that's really difficult for electric vehicles is insulation, because of course there's no engine, gearbox or driveline noise to mask anything else that's going on around you. And yet, after a few hundred kilometres on the road, a lot of it on coarse chip bitumen as we are now, this Model Y is genuinely impressive. There's a little bit of wind noise that comes off the mirrors, a tiny bit. There's a little bit of road noise that comes off the tyres as well, especially on the coarse chip surfaces, but otherwise it's very quiet and insulated in here. It's not all sweetness and light though, because that glass roof above me, that in a climate like Australia is just stupid. I've had to resort in the middle of the day, and it is 37 degrees out here at the moment, but in the middle of the day I've had to resort to wearing a hat inside the car, not because I'm going to get sunburnt, because that is tinted and I think it blocks most of the UV light, but because it's hot. The top of your head gets genuinely hot in here. And yes, I know if you're a Tesla fan, you can buy an optional shade and you can cover it up if you want to. The point is, you shouldn't have to. In a $77,000 give or take car on the road, you shouldn't have to. And it's always been my opinion that in a climate like Australia that can be very, very harsh, you shouldn't sell any vehicle that's got a glass roof like that without a proper protective cover that comes across it. So the aircon has to work pretty hard on a really hot day, and you'll have the fan up to keep the cabin cool. But in terms of interior refinement, comfort and noise insulation, the Model Y is genuinely impressive. Second to that though, is the way that the Tesla uses its available energy. So you've got a 60 kilowatt hour battery pack in this car, and the indicative usage on the road, this is out on the highway, is in the mid 14s, no worse than about 15, which means in the real world, against a claim of 455 kilometres, and that's a best case scenario, you're going to get around the 420 kilometre mark, and that is more than enough to do the kind of touring that we do at Drive without any worry whatsoever.
Almost heaven, West Virginia, Blue Ridge Mountains, Shenandoah River.
I drive through these little country towns, and you would have seen them if you've been out on a road trip yourself, often they're almost deserted, and there's an old petrol station in there that's all hoarded up and closed down. And that's because the modern car with a diesel or petrol engine goes a lot further and you don't have to fill it up. And I wonder, as we move into this electric future with vehicles like the Tesla Model Y, will those towns come back to life? Because it'll be smart for every country town to have electric vehicle charging. Whether the locals are driving electric vehicles or not, it'll make it a lot easier for those of us who are touring, who are out exploring the countryside, to be able to stop in and charge. BP has recently commenced the rollout of its electric vehicle charging brand Pulse at select service stations along the eastern seaboard. The first sites are now live and operating, with more being added to the existing BP network all the time. BP is aiming to set up 600 charging stations around the country and provide an easy-to-access, practical solution for Australians out on the road in electric vehicles. And let's face it, the more chargers there are, the better for everyone. Look out for BP Pulse locations when you're touring. Situated on the banks of the Peel River and home to approximately 65,000 people, Tamworth is just over 300 kilometres from the Queensland border. So if you're coming down from Brisbane, it's going to be easier for you to get to than it is if you're driving up from Sydney. The sign behind me might say it was voted Australia's tidiest town in 2009, but for 2 weeks in January, it's all about the Country Music Festival. The Country Music Festival is held every year for 10 days and is billed as the second biggest in the world, behind the festival in Nashville, Tennessee. Tens of thousands of visitors flock to Tamworth to watch established stars and the next wave of country musicians at various locations around the town. Up to 2,500 acts play in 120 locations, and the exact start of the festival is hotly debated, but there seems to be an agreement on 1968 being the first year. The main streets are closed for the festival, and it's worth spending a few hours wandering around to have a listen to what could be the next big star in country music. So as we said, we've got a special guest for this episode, country music legend, I think we can say, Troy.
Mate, you can call me legend if you like, but it doesn't wear well with me, Trent.
Troy Cassar-Daley joining us on Drive. Thank you, mate.
Lovely to see you, brother.
Thank you, mate. I know you're busy. I know you got a lot on, Tamworth Country Music Festival, but thank you for taking 10 minutes out. I understand that you came here as a young guy to busk, is that right?
I came here with my family. We came here we were all doing guitar lessons at the time. Came here to busk, and I ended up making a career out of it. And I don't know how it actually happened. It just turned into this adventure of music and referrals.
And obviously from that, you didn't grow up far from here, I guess, in country terms, but obviously from you coming here as a kid, Tamworth's come to mean a lot more to you now, right, all these years later?
Well, totally. I think our first trip up here, I was 11 years old. We found our country music tribe. We went back home and nagged our parents to come back. And every trip up was just incredible. I think I grew to love country music more with each trip. And then the more times I came back, the more opportunities arose.
People often say to me, test driving cars, driving around the country, they often say that's the best job in the world. I'll tell you what, I'm jealous of someone like you. I think that musicians, especially when you're in Australia, especially in the early days, you're on the road a lot, you're out driving, you're seeing all these amazing little towns, you're performing in these little towns, meeting locals. That's got to be one of the great privileges, right, is to get out there.
Yeah, look, it is a big privilege, and I think you've got to pinch yourself at times. Recently, I've just taken my son to a place called Owen Pelly. And look, I've been going there since I was 20, and my son is 24. I said, I'm going to take you back. I'm going to see if you remember a lot of the things I took you up there to see when you were 10. So I take him back, and then we play a show together up there at this little town. And we had to fly in, there was water everywhere. And you know what? I pinched myself again on stage. I thought to myself, this is my job, and I've made a career out of being almost a paid tourist. And we've test-driven a lot of cars too, don't worry.
I bet you have.
We've seen the good, the bad and the ugly of every hire car you could possibly imagine. And that's part of your life. And you get really good at packing a Kia Carnival.
People movers. They're the smartest way to get around, right?
Aren't they?
I don't know why Australians don't buy more of them. All right, mate. I've made this segment up right, just now, off the top of my head. It's called Trent's Top 10.
Okay.
Or Trent's 10 Toughies. And they're not going to be tough at all. That's the point. First car.
E.H. Holden.
Favourite car.
E.H. Holden.
Really? That's pretty boring.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
know.
it's fair, I suppose. Road trip song. You can only pick one.
Bow River.
Oh, I like that. Good choice. Good choice. Now, this is a technical one. Do you write the music first or the lyrics?
That works both ways, mate. Always. It always works both ways.
City or country?
Oh, country for sure.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Favourite place to visit? Anywhere in the world, that can be.
Anywhere in the world?
Anywhere in the world.
Oh, look, I'd have to say a place called Owenpelly, Goombalanya in Northern Territory in Arnhem Land. It's one of my favourite places and it's never gotten old.
Best city in Australia?
I'd have to say Brisbane, you know.
Oh,
it's a
no.
very livable city and I love it.
Everyone watching in New South Wales, sorry about that. Best country town in Australia?
Oh, I'd have to say Grafton. I'm very biased. I went to school there, but I just love its feel. I love the river.
It's a beautiful town.
Yeah, Clarence River.
Have you got a nickname?
Yeah, I've had many nicknames, but it used to be just...
The PC ones?
That's right. The common one I got called when I was out here was Roy, because it's shortened for Troy.
Ah.
But I also used to get called Tex Dubbo, which I still do a show under that name.
I like that. Do you act differently when you're playing Tex Dubbo?
Yes, I do. And I get a little bit more abrasive.
All right, okay. Last question, and I'm looking for validation here, with no comment as to why I'm asking the question. It's a Zoom meeting.
Yep.
You're at home. Pants or no pants?
Oh, look, if it's above the
Yeah.
waist,
Yeah.
anything goes. And definitely commando. None of the underpant action going on there, mate. So yeah, just don't like them.
There you go. Top 10 with Trent. Thank you, mate. Tesla does a lot of things really well. The integration of the technology, the way that you can control the vehicle and monitor the charging from the app on your phone, the connectivity of the vehicle itself are all top shelf, and in many ways a lot of manufacturers could learn from the way that Tesla's done it. I do think that this single screen without a head-up display, without a driver display, is a little bit complex and does encourage you to take your eye off the road, especially if you're looking at the speed. If you're in changeable speed limits and you're needing to look at your road speed, you do have to look away from the centre of the steering wheel to check the speed that you're doing. However, the integration of the technology and the way it works is very, very well executed. The other thing that Tesla does particularly well, and I think it's something that electric vehicles really open up a new world for, is the styling that you might look at from the outside and think it looks a bit weird, it's a bit round-headed, and it's got a strange shape to it, opens up an enormous amount of room inside the cabin. So whether you're sitting in the front row or the second row, there's an incredible amount of headroom and shoulder room, and it feels like adults can tour in this vehicle in comfort no matter how long the drive. The seats themselves are comfortable, but it's that airy sense of view around you, a big glass house, tall windows, and the packaging of the vehicle relative to how you sit inside it that makes you feel like you're in a really comfortable environment. I still think Tesla could probably get rid of this center console area because of course there's no driveline through here, so there's no reason not to open this all up to extra storage and a slightly different design. But as I said, the exterior design that you might look at and go, oh, I'm not sure if I like it, it really does open up a very versatile cabin. Well, we've come to the end of another episode of Drive, and it's no wonder that we are welcomed with open arms whenever we drive into a country town when we're shooting an episode of this TV show, because we roll into town and it starts raining exactly as it has done today, but the farmers need the rain, so it's not all bad. Now, on to the question of whether the Tesla Model Y works as a longer distance touring vehicle. The answer is yes. You do need to plan ahead. You do need to understand where you're going to stop and where you're going to charge and what you're going to do while you're charging, but it absolutely works as a comfortable, practical and easy to live with long distance tourer. So that's fantastic news for those of you who already own an EV and want to get out and explore the countryside, or are thinking about buying an EV and wondering whether it will work. As always, we've had a ball shooting this episode, taking you from the heart of the Hunter Valley all the way to Tamworth. It's an amazing town at any time of year, but if you can get out there in the month of January for the Country Music Festival, you absolutely have to do it. Even if you're not into country music, it's just great fun to be out there. Don't forget that for any of the information you want to know about the Model Y specifically, or the drive that we've taken for this episode, that's all over at drive.com.au. And we'll see you next week here on Channel 9 for another great drive. We started our drive this week in the heart of the Hunter Valley in Pecolban before driving through Singleton, Muswellbrook, Aberdeen and Scone on the way to Corindai. From Corindai, we took the back way to Tamworth via Werris Creek.
For more information on pricing and specifications, head to drive.com.au. Plus, get all the details for this drive by scanning the QR code on your screen or visiting us online.
Next week, Emma takes the Nissan Leaf on a search for adventure not too far from the Melbourne CBD.